In 2019, a company that didn't invent technology, didn't own buildings, and had never made a profit was valued at $47 billion. Not because it changed how people worked, but because one man convinced the world that renting office space was a revolution. His name was Adam Neumann. And before this story ends, you'll understand how charisma, belief, and the culture of Silicon Valley turned ordinary offices into one of the most expensive illusions in business history, and why the system rewarded him even after everything collapsed. Adam Neumann didn't sell desks. He sold, meaning from the very beginning, he framed WeWork not as a real estate company, but as a movement, a global community, a new way of living, working, and connecting. That distinction matters because it allowed investors to suspend logic, and once logic is gone, valuation becomes a fantasy driven by belief instead of numbers. Neumann was born in Israel, raised between countries, and arrived in New York with the confidence of someone who believed rules existed for other people. He wasn't a technical genius. He wasn't a real estate mastermind. What he had was presence. He could walk into a room full of powerful investors and make them feel like they were missing out on the future if they didn't say yes. And that ability, more than any spreadsheet, is what built WeWork. The pitch was deceptively simple. Companies no longer wanted boring offices. They wanted community, energy, purpose. WeWork would lease large office spaces, redesign them with modern aesthetics, fill them with startups and freelancers, and charge a premium. On paper, this was just long-term leases paired with short-term subleases, a risky mismatch that any traditional investor would flag immediately. But Adam Neumann wrapped this basic model in language borrowed from religion and tech evangelism. He didn't talk about rent, he talked about elevating the world's consciousness. And here's the first promise I want you to remember, because we'll come back to it later. The more vague Adam's language became, the more money investors threw at him. WeWork grew fast, shockingly fast. Cities around the world filled with identical glass offices, kombucha taps, neon slogans, and open spaces designed to feel alive. Startups loved it, freelancers loved it. But behind the aesthetic, the company was bleeding cash at an extraordinary rate. Every new location made the problem worse, not better. Losses weren't shrinking with scale. They were exploding. Normally, this is where the story ends. A company grows too fast, the math fails, and investors pull out. But this is where Adam Neumann did something extraordinary. He reframed failure as vision. Losses weren't losses. They were investments in growth. Debt wasn't risk. It was proof of ambition. And instead of being punished for burning money, WeWork was rewarded with more. Then came SoftBank. Masayoshi Son, the billionaire founder of SoftBank, met Adam Neumann and reportedly decided to invest billions after a single meeting, not after deep audits, not after stress tests. After belief, Son didn't see an office company. He saw a once-in-a-generation founder who could dominate cities the way tech companies dominated screens. SoftBank poured money into WeWork, inflating its valuation again and again, until $47 billion no longer sounded insane. It sounded inevitable. And this is the moment where the system fully breaks, because once a valuation gets high enough, it stops being questioned. Journalists repeat it. Analysts defend it. Employees believe it. And anyone who doubts it is labeled as someone who doesn't get it. Adam Neumann didn't just run the company. He was the company. His control was absolute. He had super voting shares that gave him more power than the board. He borrowed hundreds of millions of dollars against his shares to fund his lifestyle. He personally owned buildings that WeWork leased from him, meaning the company paid rent to its own CEO, and no one stopped him. Here's the second promise, and it's crucial. All of this was hidden in plain sight, and almost no one cared until it was too late. Inside WeWork, the culture mirrored its founder. Excess was celebrated. Private jets, tequila brands, barefoot speeches, and parties blurred the line between company and cult. Employees weren't just workers. They were believers. They weren't building offices. They were changing the world. And belief is powerful, especially when it's reinforced by money. But belief doesn't fix math. And eventually, reality demanded a conversation. In 2019, WeWork prepared to go public. This was supposed to be the final transformation, the moment Adam Neumann would be crowned not just a visionary, but a permanent billionaire. And then the IPO filing became public. For the first time, investors outside the inner circle could see the numbers. And what they saw was terrifying. WeWork was losing billions, not investing, losing. Its governance was chaotic. Its risks were extreme. Its CEO appeared to treat the company as a personal bank, and suddenly, the language stopped working. Words like community and consciousness couldn't explain why the company might never make money. Confidence collapsed overnight. The valuation fell from 47 billion to 10. Then lowered. Adam Neumann was forced out as CEO. And this is where the story takes its most disturbing turn, because Adam Neumann didn't leave poor. He didn't leave punished. He left with a golden parachute worth hundreds of millions of dollars. SoftBank paid him to go away. He walked out wealthier than most founders ever become after presiding over one of the most spectacular corporate failures of the decade. Remember the first promise. Vague language, attracting money. Remember the second, everything hidden in plain sight. Here's the final piece. Adam Neumann didn't break the system. Exposed Italiano. WeWork didn't fail because it was a scam in the traditional sense. Offices were real. People worked there. The failure happened because Silicon Valley had trained investors to value stories more than substance, vision more than verification, growth more than sustainability. Adam simply played the game better than anyone else. And even after WeWork collapsed, the story didn't end. Years later, Adam Neumann received billions more to start a new company. Same founder, same system, same belief that charisma deserves another chance. So ask yourself this. If a man can convince the world that offices are a revolution, what else are we believing today just because everyone else does? Because the most dangerous lies aren't illegal. They're inspiring. They sound like the future. And they only collapse after the people who told them are already rich. And that is the $47 billion office lie.